That was a huge, massive, about 20 years out. I mean, those are in the next 5 years. Girl here. You ready? Yeah, we got a 4, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. Yeah. Meeting come to order, please. Roll call, press your present button, please. And confirm. Don, hit your button, buddy. Thank you. Record it. Staff announcements.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple of announcements. First of all, last Thursday night, I guess that would be November 2nd, we had our first, I guess, real meeting out in Triune for the small area plan. Went very well. We had 45 or so in attendance. Oh. Got quite a lot of opinions, and so
diverse.
I'd say that. I'd say people see the same thing differently. That's nothing wrong with that. That happens all the time in this business. But at any rate, we have not set the next meeting, but I think we're hoping to have one perhaps during December. Is that correct, Mike?
We're deciding whether we're going to try to get that in before the holidays or wait till right after the New Year.
Okay. Well, either which way, though, we're quite pleased with that result. Secondly, we do have a couple of withdrawals I'd like to point out. We have item number 11, a preliminary plat for Kings Chapel Phase 8 that has been withdrawn, and item 13, which is a water bond for South Creek Rural Retreat, which has been withdrawn as well. Also, I guess it's my sad obligation to announce that Mike's father passed away this past weekend.
Sorry.
And I know that this body joins me and with the rest of us in expressing our sympathies for his loss. At any rate, that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Consideration of the minutes of October 12. Any corrections or changes? Motion made and seconded. Any further questions? Prepare to vote. Vote now. Record it. Motion carries. Thank you. Any old business, staff?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Consideration of the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to consider an item separate on our consent, please say so now. Otherwise, we'll take it as a whole. Jack?
I have a question about number 5. It really doesn't pertain to the performance bond, so I don't know if I could ask that or if we need to pull it out.
Why don't we pull it out and you can ask it?
Okay, all right.
All right, we'll take 5 at the end of the consent. Anyone else? Anyone? Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you will note on the consent agenda, item 3 is also not on consent. That puts us at the beginning at item 4, Clovercroft Preserve, Section 1. Maintenance bond for landscaping, $29,600. Recommendation, release the bond. Dropping down to item 6, Kings Chapel, Section 3C, performance bond for wastewater collection, $12,500. Recommendation, extended current amount for a period of 3 months. Item 7, Leaper's Fork Distillery, maintenance bond for landscaping, $19,830. Recommendation, release the bond. Item 8, Oak Valley Baptist Church, performance bond for landscaping, $34,400. Recommendation, this project has been abandoned, therefore release the bond. Item 9, The Grove, Section 7, performance bond for wastewater collection, $275,600. Recommendation, reduce the maintenance amount of $82,680 for a period of 1 year. Item 10, Yazdian Property, performance bond for landscaping, $7,750. Recommendation, reduce the maintenance amount of $2,325 for a period of 6 months.
Thank you, sir. A motion on the consent agenda? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Prepare to vote. Vote now. Record it. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 3, Bell Pond. Staff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff has visited the site and noted that the requested repairs have not been completed, and staff therefore recommends that this bond be called.
What's the problem, William?
We had got to a point actually where we had prepared a report for the Highway Commission for release of this bond, and we got all the way up to the resolution being prepared. In between the time of the report and the resolution being prepared, we had some severe failures due to some real heavy construction equipment apparently that was coming in and out to one of the new homes. And so we had to pull the resolution, and we've been in the process of talking to the developers about getting these repairs made. They made some efforts, but they failed again. And
How many chances have you given them?
Sir?
How many chances have you given them?
We've given them 6 or 7 months.
Oh, wow. Okay. Any questions?
They're realized that the bond was going to be called tonight. They didn't have any.
Any questions for staff? Motion made and seconded. Is this on the computer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Prepare to vote. Vote now. Don, do it again. There you go. Record it. Motion carries. Thank you. Agenda item 5, Hart's Landmark Performance Bond for Landscaping. Chairman?
And noted that the landscaping has not been installed. Staff requests a schedule for completion from the applicant within 60 days from the meeting date. If this is not received, this bond will be reviewed and possibly called.
Jack, what was your question?
And I've had a lot of complaints about this subdivision, and I get a lot of complaints about various different things, but some of these seem to be legitimate. You know, construction trucks parking in the roads, and they can't get by, and mud running off in the street, and construction equipment in somebody's yard, and it just goes on and on. So I didn't know if, actually I haven't gotten a call in 3 or 4 weeks, so maybe the county's done something to address that.
We have, yes.
Okay.
What have we done, William?
We have had numerous complaints ourselves, Commissioner Walton, and we have been out at one point in time for a period of about 2 weeks. We were going out on a daily basis. We're in most of the developments all the time, but there are some that we, of course, don't get to every day. But for a couple of weeks, we were out on a daily basis, monitoring all work, monitoring all. We had a lot of problems with regard to the boring beneath the road. There were a lot of issues there, and I believe at one point in time, didn't we issue a notice of violation? We issued a notice of violation to the developers. Since that time, I mean, we feel like we have more control of it or a better handle on it, or they at least sense the urgency to try and do a better job with regard to runoff, with regard to keeping the streets open. And so we have talked to them about how long they should use the construction entrance or the easement entrance as opposed to construction traffic going up through Hart's Landmark after the connection is made, which, by the way, that connection has been made. It is not completed yet, but that connection has been made. The barricade is still there. But we have talked to them on numerous occasions, and they seem to have taken our conversation seriously, although, you know, we never know with some of these developments. It just pops up so suddenly, like you said.
Right, okay.
I would add, too, out of fairness to the facts, Hart's Landmark has had their problems, but most of the problems we've had complaints on has to do with Fox and Canyon.
Yeah.
And sometimes their problems have gotten intermeshed, where there would be, let's say, in fact, the most recent one, there was a complaint of erosion control that the neighborhood thought belonged to Fox and Canyon. As it turned out, it was some material coming off of a lot in Hart's Landmark. So, but we, you know, I'll echo what William said. We've been kind of trying to push down on this, and it has quieted down. But you know, you get many rains like we had a couple of days ago, and I'm sure that things
Right.
can change pretty quick.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jack?
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Good, thank you. Agenda item 11 withdrawn.
Well, we
Agenda-
need a vote.
Oh, my bad. On the consent. No, on that, oh, I'm sorry, on 5? We did pull it separate. Is there a motion on agenda, consent agenda 5? Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Prepare to vote. Is that separate? Is that on the vote? Vote now. Counselor? You look like you're gonna make a speech. Agenda item 11 withdrawn. Agenda item 12, comprehensive traffic study report. Staff?
In this case, it would be Mr. Madison's.
Yep, it's up to Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of you received a copy of the full report regarding this comprehensive traffic strategy in the mail, along with a memo. I believe you've also seen the resolution for the County Commission, and most of you have participated in one form or another during this process. Some Planning Commission members even served as members of the Advisory Committee. Chairman Lackey, Commissioner McCoy, and Commissioner Baldry did. And so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to give some information regarding this, focusing primarily on the findings that the consultant team made during this process, and also the strategy that the consultant team is recommending that the county pursue in order to most effectively deal with traffic issues in the future. So just real quickly, some background. You all know this very well in your role at the Planning Commission, but the county and really Middle Tennessee in general has been experiencing very rapid population and employment growth, which of course leads to traffic congestion, which is mostly occurring in the cities, but even on many county roads we're seeing increased congestion, and that's particularly true in the peak hour. And that, of course, creates a very significant need for roadway improvements, like the ones called for in the Major Thoroughfare Plan and the Major Corridor Study and so forth. And yet there is a lack of permanent, ongoing, dedicated funding for those projects. And so as a result of that, you all have heard, we've heard, that citizens and county officials and staff have been expressing increasingly concerns about the impact that traffic is either having now or will have in the future on quality of life, and also frustration about the ability or inability to bring about meaningful roadway improvements through regulatory approaches alone. And so as a result of that, the county hired a consultant team to do three basic things. First, to evaluate current traffic conditions, focusing on the unincorporated county, making some projections and analyzing data regarding future traffic conditions, and then most importantly to develop a comprehensive set of strategies for dealing with these issues. This has been about a 1.5-year process that involved pretty significant stakeholder involvement in addition to the advisory committee that represented a cross-section of the community. We did hold some community meetings and some more focused stakeholder meetings. So I'm going to focus on the findings that the consultant team made as a result of their fairly exhaustive examination of the data and our situation. And I think the findings tell a pretty compelling story and really do a good job of summarizing the forces and the trends and the factors that contribute to traffic congestion in the county. These findings also form the basis for the strategy that they recommend. So first is a pretty obvious one, that population and employment growth continue to soar in Williamson County, and this growth is expected to continue and actually even accelerate in the future. This is a chart that is from the report. This is from the Nashville area MPO and their population projections that suggest that as many as 500,000 people could live in Williamson County as a whole by 2040. This is a high-end projection. There are other projections that aren't quite that high, but regardless of which projection you believe, the fact remains that Williamson County is expected to receive a pretty staggering amount of growth in the future. While most of this growth is taking place in the cities, there is significant development that's taking place in the unincorporated areas, and that's particularly true in the eastern part of the county. This is a map also from the report that shows all of the subdivisions with 15 lots or greater that have been approved in the unincorporated county since the year 2000. There have been 54 of those, totaling somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,400 lots. And it's interesting to note that just in the past 3 years, we've seen 19 subdivisions totaling about 2,400 lots. So that's about 35% of that 17-year total just in the past 3 years. And of course, this growth is being fueled by a number of things. First and foremost is the robust housing market that exists here due to Williamson County being such an attractive place to live. But it is important to point out the role that land use policies and regulations play in our growth. This is a map showing the areas of the unincorporated county that are zoned to allow a density of 1 unit per acre, and that does have an impact, obviously, on the growth patterns. Another contributing factor is the increased use of alternative wastewater systems, which typically can result in higher density development. There was a finding that the local growth is really just scratching the surface. That same high-end projection from the MPO suggests that as many as 124,000 additional residents could be just in unincorporated areas by 2040. This chart depicts that projected growth in the 9 geographic sub-areas, and the red areas are the areas in the eastern part of the county. So as a byproduct of the growth and the economic success that the county enjoys, traffic congestion is increasing and is impacting the quality of life of residents. And this is likely to become significantly more acute in the future. This is a chart that depicts traffic congestion in those same 9 geographic sub-areas. The point here with this chart is that by 2040, many roadways, the volume on many roadways is expected to actually exceed the capacity of those roadways, and that a lot of the roads in the eastern part of the county, like Arno, Clovercroft, and some others, are expected to have similar congestion levels to what you see now on Hillsborough and Sneed. One of the challenging aspects of traffic in Williamson County is the fact that because large areas of the county are located between rapidly growing areas like Franklin and Murfreesboro and employment centers in Cool Springs and Brentwood and Nashville, the county receives a fairly significant amount of pass-through traffic from motorists who don't live in Williamson County. In fact, right now, more than 50% of the vehicles on the major corridors live, the owners of those live outside of Williamson County. This is also from the report showing employment traffic. The point here is that unlike years ago when everyone headed north in the morning and south in the afternoon, currently there are just as many cars coming into the county for work as there are leaving, and that by 2040 the number of vehicles coming into the county for work is going to actually exceed those leaving the county. And as a result of the growth that's projected in the unincorporated county, the users on those major corridors is going to flip a little bit, and unincorporated county residents are going to become an increasingly predominant user. In fact, this suggests that they'll be the most significant user on major corridors. So obviously, because of the growth and because of the increase in traffic, there's a fairly significant need for roadway improvements, whether those are new roads or widening of existing roads or simply operational and safety improvements. This is a map that depicts all of the projects that are called for either in the county's major thoroughfare plan or the major corridors study. And the cost of these improvements is very significant. When you take out all of the state routes and just focus on county-owned roads within the unincorporated county, the cost of all the improvements in those two plans, plus some other improvements that were called for when the MPO ran their travel demand model, that totals about $378 million. And so if you contrast that with the funds that are available, which really at this point consist only of the $7 million that the Highway Commission has pledged for some improvements on the major corridors, chiefly on Arno and Clovercroft and Linwood, there's a funding gap of about $371 million. So their conclusion is that the county right now is simply lacking the necessary structural systems in order to effectively identify, prioritize, and fund roadway improvements. And that just as Williamson County has evolved from a fairly rural county to a very high-growth, rapidly developing county, the county's transportation planning and funding practices need to evolve accordingly. So in terms of the strategies that, or the strategy that the consultants are recommending, it's a series of things that they and we feel like need to be tackled in tandem. And so you know, none of these by themselves can address the problems, but rather this multifaceted approach is what's needed and what's recommended. The first is that the county needs to revisit the fundamental land use policies that are articulated in the comprehensive plan through an update to that plan with a specific emphasis on the residential densities that are permitted. Probably all of you know that in the mid-2000s, the county updated its comprehensive plan. Many of you were extremely involved with that. And at that point, a lot of ideas were explored, including whether to reduce the density in certain areas, thereby concentrating development where the infrastructure is there and relieving development pressure. At that point, the decision was made not to change the density, but 10 years have passed, and the consultant team feels like those policies at least should be revisited. Whether or not they change remains to be seen, but that those should be explored. Also, that the policies that come out of that update process need to be implemented through changes to the zoning ordinance and other regulations. That the county should prioritize roadway improvements. We do that now. In fact, the Highway Department and Commission has done that to a large degree through the major corridor study that recommend improvements specifically to Arno, Clovercroft, Linwood, and Sneed. But there are many other roads that need attention, and those should be prioritized. It may be that the county doesn't want to tackle all of those projects that we talked about earlier, and they could prioritize, and therefore the number of projects could be less, and the number of, or the amount of money that is necessary would be less. But the main one really is that the county needs to establish a permanent, dedicated source of funding in order to implement whatever group of roadway projects are ultimately pursued. Part of the consultant team, or the consultant team, consisted in part of Tisler Bice, who also was involved with the county with the educational impact fee. They handled the fiscal analysis, and what we asked them to do was to take a look at the funding gap that exists assuming worst-case scenario and that we're trying to solve for the $371 million funding gap, and come up with some potential scenarios for how to raise those funds. And so they've done that. They've come up with 5 different scenarios. They emphasize in the report, and I will, that there are other potential funding sources as well. These represent simply the ones that the consultant team felt were perhaps most suitable for Williamson County. And again, these numbers reflect the entire $371 million funding gap. What's that? Yeah, for some reason, the last 2 times we've done this, we're having some technical difficulties at this stage. You've seen it. I'm just going to kind of refer to my notes here. The first scenario, the first funding scenario is a county-wide property tax increase. And if that scenario were to be pursued, that would represent about 9-cent property tax increase. And so for the average $400,000 house, that means about a $93 per year increase. Scenario 2 would be also a county-wide scenario, this one having to do with a transportation utility fee, which is very similar to like a stormwater fee that the city of Franklin and other jurisdictions impose. That would be an annual fee that would be about $90 per dwelling and $260 for every 1,000 square feet of retail space. It's important to know that currently transportation utility fee is not permitted in Tennessee, and there would need to be some changes to state law to enable that. The third, fourth, and fifth scenarios are just unincorporated county scenarios. We asked them to look at both of those possibilities. Scenario 3 would be the property tax applying only to the unincorporated area, which would represent a 41-cent property tax increase, which would be about $410 for the average $400,000 house. Scenario 4 is a combined approach that incorporates a smaller property tax increase with a one-time impact fee that would be assessed with the building permit for new residential development. Under this scenario, the property tax increase would only need to be about 0.165, and the impact fee would be $3,300 per dwelling. And then scenario 5 would be that same transportation utility fee that we talked about earlier, applied this time only to the unincorporated areas, which would be $745 for a dwelling and $2,200 for each 1,000 square feet for commercial development. So that's the funding piece. Also incorporated in the overall strategy would be a need for the county to create a capital improvement program just for roadway improvement projects. And then the last strategy is kind of the catch-all or the other category where the county should seek opportunities to coordinate with other jurisdictions, lobby the state for either legislation or roadway improvements that would help advance the goals of this effort, and also look for opportunities for partnerships. So this last slide is simply a summary of those strategy elements. I think you did receive a copy of the resolution that the County Commission will consider on the 13th, and we're asking you to consider recommending approval of that resolution tonight. We have met thus far with the Highway Commission and also the County Budget Committee, and both of those bodies have unanimously voted to recommend approval of the resolution. Welcome.
Yeah. You were talking about a 41-cent property tax increase. Yeah, he was talking about a 41% property tax increase. 41, I think.
Cent, not percent.
How much?
41 cents for that.
Yes.
That's the unincorporated.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I may have. The question I have, typically the people in the incorporated areas don't pay for county roadways. So does that 41 cents, is that county-wide, or is that just in the unincorporated area.
This particular scenario 3 would be just an unincorporated county. Scenario number 1 would be the property tax applied countywide, and that would only be about a 9-cent property tax increase.
And could that be done?
I think they feel like it could be done, right? Yeah.
Does all, if that property tax is imposed? Yes, it would go to the, well, it depends on how it's earmarked, but if it's a typical property tax increase, it would go to the county.
Can you specifically earmark it for roads, or does it go into the general fund?
We have to talk to Nina about that, but I think you can earmark it.
Well, of some of our money, I mean, we've got like a nickel goes to the rescue squads and the fire department, and I don't recall how much now is currently going towards roads. But if we did a 9% increase across the board countywide, I don't know that we can do that, because it's improving county roads. I have no idea. I just that was what I was.
Well, whether you can and whether that's acceptable are two different questions.
Okay. All right.
So
Because all citizens of the cities are also citizens of the county.
So was the new school facilities tax that we just approved or approved, is that a general fund account or is that a school
No,
fund?
that's an impact fee.
Impact fee.
It's specifically earmarked for schools.
So can we specifically impact this for our roads?
Like one of the scenarios involves an impact fee, and if that impact fee is adopted and it's adopted for road construction, then that's all it would be used for.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. When you read through all the charts and statistics in this booklet, it definitely shows that the majority of the growth is inside the cities. The county is projected to grow 70%. The 8 PDAs in the county are projected to grow an average of 15%. So that means the cities are growing 25 or 30%. If we can't charge the cities for them using all these roads to get into it, we just will get up and quit. When you started out, the first thing the man said, he wanted to downzone the property in the eastern end of the county to 5-acre lots. They also say in this report there's only 23,000 lots left. If the county is going to grow 250,000 people and there's only 23,000 lots left, that means each lot's going to have 10 people on it. That's ridiculous. The people are coming from the city. And there's no need to start. We started this program out with a lie. We started out saying we're going to downzone growth part of the county. And we put all a year and a half in it, and we come up with the conclusion we started out looking for. That's very surprising, ain't it? But there's no way in the world, if we're going to start downzoning, let's downzone the whole dang county, across the board. No need picking on one little area that's not producing near that much percentage of the growth countywide. The Thompson Stations, the Nolansvilles, the Spring Hills, the Franklins, the Brentwoods, they're where all your growth is coming from.
Well, I think I might question Jacqueline. I just want to make sure we're going to raise property tax countywide, that one is dedicated, lockbox, or whatever you want to call it. And it goes to county roads. That's what we're trying to address here. Sammy and I talked about this a little bit earlier. The problem I'm having is that, and this is maybe personal with me, we are 50% of the problem. The other 50% is from out of county. And they want, the only recommendation is the utility, what is it called again?
Transportation utility fee?
Transportation utility fee is the only one of these recommendations that gets the people from out of county to pay a share in fixing the problem. Otherwise, we have 50% of the problem, i.e. Williamson County residents,
That's right.
paying for 100% of the solution. And I don't know why that's crawled under my skin and won't get out, but it just seems unfair.
Can I make,
I don't know how the transportation utility fee works exactly. I think I understand a little bit of it, but has there been any discussion with the potential for that thing working or passing in the state level? Do we know?
well, I think we know. I think Christie could speak to what would need to change from a statute standpoint, and I don't think it's very much. So I think it would have the potential, but you never know with the legislature, and there'd need to be a lobbying effort. But I'd like to make just a couple of points, if I could.
Go ahead.
You know, one is that I don't think this effort ever started out with a premise that there would be a downzoning. You know, that has been discussed a couple of times, but the main focus has been really that in the unincorporated county, if we're going to be proactive and responsible with how we address traffic issues, then something has to change, and likely it needs to be a combination of looking at our land use policies in conjunction with trying to develop some sort of a funding source and a road prioritization list to start tackling some of this. I should have made the point that the consultant team isn't recommending any particular funding source, and the report doesn't, and the resolution doesn't, but rather what the report suggests is that the county needs to kind of systematically look at the traffic issues and pursue a strategy that incorporates the elements that we've talked about.
Christie, have you looked at the transportation utility fee approach in any legal way?
Yes, I have. And there's a couple of places in the Tennessee Code that I see that it could possibly be incorporated there. Of course, I mean, it's something the General Assembly would have to adopt.
Can that be done county by county?
Well, that's an interesting question. Most statutes...
What's an interesting answer then?
Well, there's a couple of ways to approach that. Most statutes are adopted and they're called of general application, so they apply statewide. Sometimes the legislators will categorize it where it's only for certain population categories, which means it's aimed at a particular county or counties. And so you would have a general law, but it would only have limited application to certain counties. There's a debate about whether that's a good thing to do or not, but it's done regularly. And then you also have the private acts, which we don't have private acts as often as we used to. And that would be a law just for Williamson County. So there's 3 different ways to approach it. Now, have we talked to the legislators about it? No, because until there's some sort of action from the Highway Commission, the Planning Commission, and the County Commission, there's nothing to really discuss with them. But in my view of looking through the Tennessee Code, there's a couple of places where I see that the changes could be made to adopt something like that, but we would want to talk to the legislators and see where they think it would be best to make the change to try and possibly get this enabling authority.
Mike, where do you see this going from here? If we support the plan, which is pretty easy to do because it doesn't have any conclusions or direction, it just has ideas, so to speak. Where does it go from here?
County Commission is going to consider a resolution on the 13th to endorse the findings of the plan, and then hopefully...
No different than what we would do tonight.
I'm sorry?
No different than what we would do tonight.
Yeah, you all would make a recommendation to the County Commission about the resolution, and by endorsing this, then that would set things in motion that, in terms of implementation of the ideas that are contained in here, including the comprehensive plan update and the road prioritization and pursuing some funding sources.
Other comments, guys? Ladies?
Question, Mike.
Steve?
The 370 million or whatever the target was of road improvements, was that only for road improvements that were anticipated in the unincorporated areas?
Yes.
So in addition to those, there's road improvements that would be needed in the incorporated areas that would need a funding source as well.
Yes. This effort has always had a focus on the unincorporated county.
I was just, if one of the 9 cents per thousand or 9 cents per hundred, in addition, there's city or incorporated roadway improvements that are gonna have to be funded through some vehicle, whether that be property tax or whatever strategy the incorporated areas would employ.
Right. Correct.
So I just want, this does not solve the traffic problems in the county. This only addresses what we believe or what our consultants believe are the traffic issues in the unincorporated areas.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, that's fair, because again, it is a regional issue, a regional problem.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't.
And we've had these discussions over time, when we've had individual projects come in. We have, we provide a lot of connective tissue between cities within the county, and for that matter, folks coming to the county to work and all these other things. So it's a vexing issue at best.
I agree with what we're discussing, but there is another big source of funding that's going to be required to pay for road improvements in the incorporated areas, and I don't know what the incorporated area address or strategies are for that. And my suggestion is let's see if there can be some collaboration between what the incorporated areas may be doing and what the unincorporated areas may want to do. Because it's a problem for somebody said we're all residents of the county.
Other comments? Sammy?
The only thing I'll just say is, I think we can all agree that we have a traffic issue, and whether it's out of county people coming through or if it's being generated, we are going to continue to have more problems with traffic because we are going to continue to have people moving to this county. It's very desirable. And we've got to figure out a way. Today, we spend, what's the highway budget, 10 million? Is it? 11 million. That is spent on maintaining roads within the county, unincorporated area, and that is what we're spending. We're not spending anything on capacity. I won't say anything. I mean, we're doing some minor things.
No, you're right. No, you're right.
Realistically, we're spending $0 on capacity-related anything, and whatever it is, it'd be great if we can get the $370 million paid for, but we've got to make progress because doing nothing's not an option.
Exactly.
And I think everybody would agree with that. I mean, for the most part, doing nothing is not an option, whether you live in rural county or you live in the grassland area and are dealing with Hillsborough Road today. And
Mike, I'm sorry, Sammy, you done?
yeah.
What was the dollar amount for a road impact fee for new construction?
Applying only to unincorporated areas, it was $3,300 per dwelling. And that was going to be used, that scenario would be in conjunction with
But you also had a plus a property tax.
Yes, in conjunction with a smaller property tax increase.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. That was 33. I thought that was a standalone.
No, that scenario would be $3,300 impact fee combined with I think it was 15 cent, if I remember correctly. I'll try to advance that.
It took
a smaller property tax increase.
Took the 41 cent down to a smaller amount.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, 16
Well,
cents.
I don't want to downplay our authority here, but the funding is a county issue, and Jack certainly knows that. Not something we're going to recommend. I assume we're not going to. Right now, I'd rather bite the head off a rattlesnake than start downzoning, though, if you want to know the truth, because that's not going to be easy. If it were a selected solution, because I've been to that rodeo a time or two, and it's not fun, guys.
Might be best to look at it in terms of it's a cafeteria plan. There are options out there.
I understand.
The value of this report has always been, okay, let's fix the problem, quantitatively. what do we have quantitatively we're looking at? These are some of the things we can do.
It may, I see I'm looking for a word and I can't think of one, a combination of a lot of different solutions that come together to make this thing work.
Cafeteria plan.
I understand cafeteria plan, but and I'm talking about in the downzoning and the funding, who funds what for whom and how's it dedicated and all those complex issues. We can beat this dead horse a while longer if you'd like. Don, you got to come in?
While I'm in a complete agreement that we need to find a solution for our traffic problem, I'm going to vote no for sending this report to the County Commission for the following reasons. Widened county roads will do anything but bring more traffic on them. Traffic is like water and electricity. It will take the path of least resistance. But if we widen roads going to interstates, the traffic will use these. Bypasses to move traffic off existing roads will also work. We need to stop building 4-lane roads that run into 2-lane roads. The comprehensive traffic strategy does not make any specific judgments or decisions on the density of a land use. Without this first, how can you put a dollar amount on what is needed? I find myself disappointed in this report that tells very little that was not already known and lacks direct solutions.
Amen.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hey, let me say
Pete?
one quick thing.
Go ahead. One quick thing.
I can do it, really. I was very disappointed with this report because it never addressed the impact of developments on road situations, and it never did address the county giving national headquarters tax breaks to move to Williamson County without putting money into the road plan, because where's all these people from Rutherford County and Spring Hill and Lewisburg coming? They're coming to Cool Spring to work in these corporate headquarters. They have a big responsibility for road situations in this county, just like developers do. That's all I'll say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? We have a request of staff to approve a motion to approve the report forwarded to the county commission. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
You got it up, Debbie?
Say again?
Debbie, you have the...
Mike, pull that white plug out of the laptop.
Oh, there we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got the right one up there, ma'am? Smiling ma'am. Any further discussion? Anyone? Prepare to vote. Vote now. Record it. Motion carries. Thank you. Any other business? Any? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.